The headline on the newsstand, "Britain considers a U-turn, is a return to Europe back on the table," was less a shock than a weary sigh. It was as if the city itself, shrouded in drizzle and the gray light of dawn, was pausing to take stock of what had been lost and what might still be regained. It was December 2025, and the question lingered in the air: had the country taken the wrong path? The chill in the air seemed to echo the uncertainty that had settled over the nation, as people waited for buses or hurried to work, their faces marked by a quiet introspection. Years of slow-burning regret had replaced the fiery debates of 2016. The passionate arguments, the waving flags, the chants and protests, all had faded into a kind of national fatigue. Now, the streets that once rang with slogans were silent, the energy spent, replaced by a heavy sense of what might have been. The grand promises of a global Britain now echoed in empty warehouses and shuttered shops. Once bustling high streets had become quiet, their windows dark, as businesses struggled to survive in a world that felt less open, less connected. The nation felt like it had woken from a long party, only to find the house in disarray and a hefty bill on the doormat. The excitement and bravado of the past had given way to the sobering reality of consequences: unpaid debts, broken promises, and a sense of collective hangover. Daily life was harder. Commutes cost more. Groceries stretched paychecks, and the news was a drumbeat of closures and warnings. Every trip to the supermarket was a reminder of rising prices. Every train journey a test of patience and budget. The cost of living crisis was no longer just a headline, it was a daily struggle for millions. The energy of Brexit had faded, replaced by a quiet, gnawing sense that something had gone wrong. The banners that once proclaimed victory now hung tattered and forgotten, relics of a moment that had passed, leaving behind only questions and doubts. The freedom to work, travel, or study across Europe was gone, replaced by paperwork and delays. Young people, once eager to explore the continent, now faced barriers their parents never knew. Business travelers and holidaymakers alike found themselves tangled in red tape, their journeys slowed by forms and restrictions. The UK felt smaller, more isolated, watching the world move on. As European neighbors forged new partnerships and opportunities, Britain seemed to be standing still, its flag fluttering alone against a sky heavy with uncertainty. The question of rejoining the EU, once taboo, was now whispered in cafes and living rooms. Conversations that had once been heated and divisive were now cautious, thoughtful, as people weighed the costs of pride against the hope for a better future. People were looking at their bills and their children's futures, asking, was this really the future we voted for? Parents worried not just about today, but about what tomorrow would bring for the next generation. The sense of responsibility was heavy, the stakes higher than ever. The headline wasn't just political, it was a reflection of a nation beginning to reconsider its biggest decision in a generation. The debate was no longer about winning or losing, but about healing, about finding a way forward that made sense for everyone. The Brexit hangover was giving way to a sober reassessment. In the quiet moments of the morning, as rain tapped on windows and headlines stared back from empty tables, Britain was beginning to ask itself, what comes next, and how do we make things right? Walk through any British town in late 2025, and you can't help but notice how much has changed since the Brexit vote. The familiar rhythms of daily life feel altered, as if the country is still searching for its footing in a new era. High streets, once bustling with shoppers and lively chatter, are now noticeably quieter. Markets that used to overflow with local produce and friendly banter have fewer stalls, and to let signs seem to multiply on every block, a silent testament to businesses that couldn't weather the storm. The cost of living is the topic on everyone's lips, whether it's the rising price of petrol, the shock of the latest electricity bill, or the simple act of buying a loaf of bread. Every trip to the supermarket or petrol station is a reminder of how much tighter budgets have become. The aftermath of Brexit hasn't brought a dramatic collapse, but rather a slow, grinding erosion of prosperity and optimism. Families gather around kitchen tables worried about the future, while the pace of life in towns feels slower, more uncertain. Small business owners now spend hours wrestling with complicated customs forms, trying to navigate new rules that seem to change every month. Farmers, once proud of their exports, now watch crops rot in the fields for lack of workers or buyers, their livelihoods hanging in the balance. For young people, the dream of studying, working, or even falling in love across Europe has become tangled in red tape. Opportunities that once seemed open and limitless now come with new barriers, forms, and uncertainty about what the future holds. The much-promised bonfire of red tape has instead become a mountain of new bureaucracy. Businesses, both large and small, are buried under paperwork, struggling to keep up with ever-changing regulations and requirements. The divisions that split the country in 2016 haven't healed. Instead, they've settled into a tense, unspoken truce. Families and friends avoid the topic, but the sense of division lingers in every conversation, every community event. Both Leavers and Remainers now share a sense of disappointment and disillusionment. The promises of a brighter future have faded, replaced by a quiet frustration and a longing for the certainty of the past. The confident swagger of global Britain has given way to a quieter, more anxious mood. The country's ambitions feel muted, as if the nation is still waiting for a new sense of purpose to emerge. The Brexit hangover is more than just economic. It's a national mood, a lingering sense of regret and uncertainty that colors everyday life. As Britain looks to the future, the question remains: how long will this hangover last, and what will it take to move on? To understand today's regret, we must remember the hope of 2016. The Brexit campaign promised to take back control of laws, borders, and money. It was a message of empowerment, pride, and economic prosperity. The Red Bus Pledge, $350 million a week for the NHS, captured imaginations. Leaving the EU was sold as a risk-free path to a better funded, more secure future. The campaign promised a bonfire of regulations, new global trade deals, and a points-based immigration system. It was a vision of boundless opportunity and restored national pride. These promises made leaving the EU feel like a leap toward a brighter future. The reality of 2025 stands in stark contrast to the sunlit uplands promised in 2016. Instead of prosperity, the UK faces economic stagnation and lower tax revenues. The NHS struggles with record waiting lists and staff shortages, not a windfall. British businesses are drowning in new bureaucracy, especially small exporters. Trade deals with countries like Australia and New Zealand have barely moved the needle. The end of free movement has led to chronic labor shortages in key sectors. The government's points-based immigration system hasn't filled the gaps. The dream of global Britain has collided with the reality of diminished leverage. The promise of control has come at the cost of a less dynamic, more strained economy. Nearly a decade on, Brexit's social divisions remain stubbornly present. Families still tiptoe around politics at gatherings. The scars of 2016 haven't faded. The divide is generational and geographical. Young people feel their futures were decided by others, while many in post-industrial towns feel ignored. Politics remains trapped in the Brexit vortex, with every issue viewed through its prism. The promised unity never arrived. Instead, cynicism and distrust in politicians have grown. Both Leavers and Remainers feel misled, fueling public exhaustion and disengagement. The unhealed divide is about more than Europe. It's about lost faith in politics itself. Britain's exit from the EU was the climax of a long, ambivalent relationship. From the start, the UK approached Europe with skepticism, seeking opt-outs and special deals. The press fueled Euroscepticism with decades of exaggerated stories about EU meddling. This narrative painted Brussels as a bureaucratic superstate, eroding public trust. By 2016, the idea that the EU was a source of absurdity felt like common sense. The Remain campaign struggled to make a positive case for membership, relying on warnings rather than hope. The Leave campaign seized the optimistic narrative, selling a dream of renewal. Britain's history of doubt made the leap to leave an easier choice for many. The Leave campaign's genius was its slogan, "Take back control." It spoke to fears about immigration, frustration with regulations, and a longing for national pride. The promise of $350 million a week for the NHS was simple and powerful, bypassing complex arguments. The campaign positioned itself as the voice of ordinary people against a remote elite. Every expert warning became proof the system was rigged. Figures like Farage and Johnson played the anti-politician, resonating with a distrustful public. The campaign was relentlessly optimistic, promising a dynamic, independent Britain. In contrast, Remain's focus on risk felt uninspiring. The Leave message offered hope and a chance for radical change. In a weary nation, that vision proved irresistible. The years after Brexit have revealed the true price of sovereignty. The British economy has underperformed, with trade barriers adding costs and delays. New trade deals have brought marginal benefits, failing to offset lost EU trade. Businesses face more paperwork, not less, especially small firms. The dream of deregulation has become a reality of self-imposed bureaucracy. Public cynicism has soared as promises of more money and control have gone unfulfilled. Many feel betrayed, fueling distrust in politics and a sense of powerlessness. The UK now stands outside the world's major power blocks, its influence diminished. Young Britons have lost the right to live and work across Europe, a profound loss. The price of sovereignty has been isolation, missed opportunities, and a smaller role on the world stage. The idea of the United Kingdom rejoining the European Union, once considered a fringe notion, has now entered the heart of mainstream political debate. What was once dismissed as wishful thinking is now being discussed seriously in newspapers, on television, and in Parliament. This shift in public discourse is largely driven by pragmatic concerns, especially over the state of the economy, the cost of living, and Britain's diminished global influence since Brexit. Many businesses, from large financial institutions to small exporters, have felt the impact of leaving the EU, and ordinary citizens are noticing changes in prices and job opportunities. Recent polls consistently show that a majority of Britons, particularly among the younger generation, now favor a return to the EU. For many young people, Europe represents opportunity, freedom of movement, and a sense of belonging to something bigger. However, the path back to Brussels is anything but straightforward. The political and emotional hurdles are significant, with deep divisions still running through families, communities, and political parties. Any serious move to rejoin the EU would inevitably reopen old wounds from the Brexit debate, risking even deeper polarization and reigniting passionate arguments on both sides. At present, no major party leader is willing to openly champion the cause of rejoining the EU, at least not yet. The political risks remain high, and party strategists are wary of alienating key voter blocs. Meanwhile, the European Union has moved forward without the UK. Any future application to rejoin would likely come with tougher terms, such as adopting the euro and joining the Schengen area, conditions that could prove controversial in Britain. While EU leaders might welcome the UK back in principle, it would be as a different kind of partner, one expected to meet stricter requirements and demonstrate renewed commitment. For now, a softer step, such as rejoining the single market or customs union, might be more realistic, allowing Britain to rebuild economic ties without full political integration. Ultimately, the future of Britain's relationship with Europe depends on honest national reflection, open dialogue, and a willingness to learn from the past. The country must weigh its options carefully, considering both the costs and the benefits. Whether the UK chooses to return to the EU or forges a new path, the journey ahead must be guided by realism, unity, and a shared desire for a more hopeful and prosperous future. One thing is clear: the conversation about Britain's place in Europe has only just begun, and it's not going away anytime soon.